for being here, and just to give him a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Genuinely, it's such a privilege to be here, like today, on your first proper day getting together. You never really get this chance again, and to be with people in important moments is always a privilege. So thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting someone who doesn't necessarily fit the exact mould of what you will be getting a lot of on this course. But I think it's important sometimes to build bridges and cross gaps into different spaces to make sure that we work and move forwards together. I'd say it was in November. No, it was in February, I apologise. I made a little trip up to Inverness, and I went to go visit a gin distillery up there because what I've been doing is spending a lot of time out in nature, connecting with different people and different makers in those environments, which I'll tell you more about. But I agreed to go and speak at the local primary school, and it was a small group of about 25, 30, I think 6 and 7 year olds. And I'm used to speaking at conferences and running businesses and things like that. And the last year I've spent living in the woods, which again I'll tell you more about. So the last thing on my mind was going to speak to 6 and 7 year olds. I thought, how on earth am I going to take these musings about how the world works and how humans survive in this crazy environment and talk to 6 year olds about it? And I had dinner with a friend, or a friend of a friend actually, in Luton before I flew out, and he's a primary school teacher, and he said to me, I was like, what on earth am I going to do? Probably rambled on at him for about 20 minutes, and he said, look, just don't underestimate them. Don't underestimate them. Just tell them exactly what you've been working on, exactly what you've been thinking, show them what you've been doing, and you'll be surprised. They'll just get it, you know? And so I took that advice and I went up there and I told them what I've been working on. I told them, showed them some of the woods, I showed them what I've been doing and building, and lo and behold, you could hear a pin drop in there. They had great questions, they came up with great ideas, and I came out of there and I realised that kids really do make the best philosophers. They're really good at engaging with big open questions, big problems of life. What does it mean to be alive? What is death? How do we live? How do we thrive? How do we do life well together? And I think actually as we go through life, we kind of begin to struggle more with these big, important and natural questions. And I've realised in my own life that actually after doing 10 years of running companies and travelling the world and doing all sorts of stuff, actually being like a child in that way, not childish, sometimes childish, but mainly trying to be childlike in the way that I condition my mind is actually extremely helpful. And I want to show you a little clip. I'll show you a few clips as we go through today. And this is where I left everything behind and decided to start from scratch about, it's getting on for 2 years ago now. That's actually not a very good idea, by the way, because it's a drone and they're quite dangerous, so don't try and catch a drone, but I've since learned it's not the smartest thing to do. But the year before this year, I actually travelled around to 20 different countries all around the world. I did a round the world tour with my friend Louis. I don't know if any of you watch YouTube. Anybody watch YouTube? YouTubers, vloggers, that kind of thing? He's a travel vlogger, and we went around the world to 10 different countries, and I did 10 other countries actually working on my thesis, which again I'll tell you more about in a bit. And we went and listened to young people all around the world, hearing what ideas they could imagine that could make the worlds that they live in better. And I got absolutely exhausted and decided to stay still for a year, and instead of travelling around the world, let the world travel around me and see what I could learn. And in that woodland, this is my first time in Sussex really. I grew up in Surrey and in London, and this was my first time down into the world, or what I think of as the world of the maker. I met farmers and growers, people who build things and whittle things, and people who actually make their living from the land, that actually are invested in the soil that they stand on. Whereas I've spent my whole life working on the internet and been very disconnected from all that. I mean, today I met with one of the governors from the NHS Trust Partnership for Sussex. I'm working with a school down the road called Windlesham, and I'm finding that compared to London, let's say, down here in Sussex, and I know some of you will have only arrived in the last few days to be here, it is an incredible place to get shit done, to actually work on things, to actually make things and try and experiment. And so I would encourage you absolutely to go and find those makers amongst you, and to make sure that you make best use of that culture, because it's not apparent everywhere. And I think the one key thing I want to impart today, I guess, to really leave in your mind, if you don't listen to anything else I say, or you can't remember anything else in a month's time, just please remember this, that I think the world that we are moving into has some significant challenges that no other generations have had to face. And put shortly, I think dealing with bridging the gap into a world fueled by artificial intelligence, dealing with our environmental crisis, and dealing essentially with the symptom of us not being able to keep up with the tools that we've made, in finding the refugee crisis. Those are problems that we have to face uniquely as a generation that no one's really had to face in other generations. And it is a very unknown and unknowable world. And when you're living in an unknown and unknowable world, you can't prepare in the same way. For example, if I know I need to get a screw into something, then the only tool I need to take is a screwdriver. But if I don't know how I'm going to fix things together, then what I need to do is take something like a Swiss Army knife that has a list of options in it. In a situation that's unknown or unknowable, we need a set of skills and tools that allows us to engage in a place that is basically unprecedented. When I think about you guys and what you're going to be doing as you go into these classrooms and deal with young people, we have to be equipping young people with the tools to deal with an unknowable and unknown future, a future that we don't even understand. Okay, and so the common denominator that brings that whole world to your whole world, I think, is the power of imagination. If we can do one thing with young people, if we can support their imagination, support their curiosity, and when they have ideas, when they ask the question why, when they want to go down the rabbit hole, if we as individuals can encourage them to do that, then I think that we are helping them start the journey that they need to go and engage with this unknowable future. And that, for me, has only come later in life. I started my first business when I was 19, straight out of school, like kind of, I'm sure some of you guys are right now. And I managed to build that to 20 staff and sold it when I was 21. Lucky enough to pay off my mortgage, and then got to start asking bigger and bigger questions. But it's almost like I skipped the playful part, the explorative part of life, because I just started working really fast, really hard, with lots of people, lots of responsibility. And it was only when I came out of my second major business called Givey, which was a donation platform for charities, when I was 28 or 29, about 3 or 4 years ago, that I really began to give myself the freedom to explore life, to start from scratch, to think and observe it through my own eyes rather than through the frameworks that I had been offered. And then that's the first time that I, for myself, have found this space to imagine, to think about ideas that I would never have got to normally, because I didn't have an A to B. I just allowed myself to play and to enjoy the space. And at the end of the day, in the classroom, you'll have curriculum to deal with, you'll have scores that you've got to get to, you've got to get attainment stuff you've got to get your kids to, but ultimately, like me standing in front of you now, you are the message. The main thing the kid engages with is you. There's no better time for this than now, over this year especially, and then in the next couple of years, to explore, to play, to expand your mind, to try things, to learn in a playful, explorative fashion. If you actually get those skills under your belt, like I've only managed to get at the end of my 20s and going into my 30s, you, as the message in the classroom, will be much fuller, and you'll understand the child's mind a lot better. Because I don't know how you feel, but when you come towards the end of your education life, it's all about getting towards the goal, right? You're here because you want to qualify, because you want to be out there doing the work in the classroom. But that's not at all how it is at the beginning of the journey, or for me when I got to my 30s. For them, it's about being open to the world and being these kid philosophers that ask the big questions and aren't afraid to do that. So the more we can do that in our own lives, and the more we can turn around and find friends in this room that we can go on road trips and adventures and send each other links of resources that we found to go above and beyond in pushing each other and learning together, the more useful we're going to be as the message in the classroom to help these kids to explore the life and the world that's around them. And so there's two main ideas, I guess, that came to me whilst I was exploring in the woods. The first is really what we're not going to talk much about today, is that I think that the nation-state idea, the way the world's organised into 200 countries, is an idea that has passed its sell-by date. It's not capable of dealing with the world that we're now in, given the tools that we've created. I make YouTube videos once a week, and people watch them from 150 different countries all around the world. People send me stuff from 100, well, no, not from 150 countries, but from a selection of those countries, probably 20 countries all around the world. It is, as you know, when you use the internet, we genuinely do live in a global world, but our political structure hasn't caught up yet. We'll park that for today. It's not the main focus, but the other idea that has really grabbed me and I've gone the furthest with, and really has been the core of my intellectual journey, if you will, again much later than it will be for you guys, has been thinking about what intelligence is. I spent a year in San Francisco learning about the future of technology and thinking about the future of the world. I spent a lot of time looking at virtual reality spaces like at Stanford University and learned about artificial intelligence. And then I thought, well, hang on, if we're talking about artificial intelligence, then what is real intelligence? And I started looking at all the different disciplines of biology and machine learning and human psychology, and realized that there wasn't a unified way of thinking about or understanding this. So I set about trying to think about it for myself. And I'm not going to bore you senseless with going on about it. I've done a bunch of lectures at UCL University. I've got the links for them if you want to know. But I thought instead I would try and show you the simple thing I found through 18 months of research and then 18 months of exploration of my own ideas. And hopefully, if this works, I never tried this before, okay, so forgive me if it goes a little bit wrong, but hopefully this will articulate the idea a little bit for you. Okay, so this really could go horribly wrong. Okay. Okay. Now, if we look at that, it looks really weird. Firstly, it looks weird. It looks like Flubber. Do you remember that? No, you probably don't remember the film. Yeah, Flubber. Yes. If we ask the question, what is paint? Okay. I mean, throw out some answers. What is paint? What are we looking at? Not a theoretical idea, but look at it. What is it?
Colour.
It's colour. It's green. It looks green to me. I don't know about you. I think it's green. I would call it green. What else is it?
Potential.
Potential? In what way? Just out of interest. That sounds good.
Potential to create something.
Okay. Cool.
Meaning.
Nice. What else is it?
Material.
Material. Probably some oil type thing. Some unpronounceable ariamide, phyllocyanide. Really ruins the romance of it, doesn't it? Let's call it oil or acrylic. Sorry, it's acrylic. That's the nice lead on the front. Okay, so what we're doing is looking at some of the biochemical attributes of this substance, this material that's in front of us. But a bit like you were alluding to, if we ask, what is it to paint, then we're not asking the same question at all. Not that one question is better than the other question. They're just very, very different. And if we only explored what is paint, we would only, like, if we wrote down the list of all the stuff that you would say about that, we would have a good comprehensive list of all the attributes we could give it, but we would know absolutely nothing about what it is to paint, how to actualize that potential that you see because of maybe past experience or whatever that you can see in this. And in the dictionary, if you look up paint, you'll find that there is a noun, which is the classification of the material, the word, the properties of the material, and there's the verb, which is to paint. But if we look at intelligence in the dictionary, we only have the noun. We only have the way of thinking about intelligence, that is a classification, that is a static idea of have or have not, a label. We don't have the idea in the English or Spanish language, I don't know about other languages, of what it is to intelligence or intelligencing. But that is actually bonkers, because if you think for a second what intelligence is, there is no material or substance like this to be able to point at or talk about. There is only a process of engagement. You can only really see a system, let's talk about people in this instance, you can only see people being intelligent or exhibiting intelligence or doing intelligencing in action as they engage with the environment, taking stimulus in, metabolizing it, handling it, processing it internally, and then expressing something out. So that was basically what I thought was bonkers about the whole concept, and got very excited about exploring this whole other area, interdisciplinary area, of what does it mean if we try to observe intelligence as a process in action, as a flow, rather than as a static attribute. Are you with me? Does it still make sense? Okay, good. Because I'm sure as hell better not be holding this paint for nothing. So I think about it like this, right? The concept that we currently have of intelligence is like painted on a canvas like this. Okay? It's focused on cognitive capacity and function. And really, I would say, for the most part, our comprehension of intelligence is focused on just the mind. But as of yet, we haven't figured out how to make a mind work separate from a body. We don't know how to make my mind function well in the world without using the body as the vehicle to make it work. In the future, we might be able to upload minds or whatever. Until that point, we need mind-body together. And actually, what we care about, and what I hope you will care about, is the whole person that you are helping. And actually, there's loads of people that you'll come across, I'm sure, in your course, like Carol Dweck, Esther Thalen. Write that name down, Google it if you want. She's probably my favourite person in my research that I found on intelligence, where she realised that there's a million different ways, a million's too many, I exaggerate, but go with me, different ways that babies learn to walk. Until she came along, we thought there was a linear path, a right way to learn how to walk, and that children needed to follow the same steps in order to get to walking. But in practice, we've learned that that is not how it works. It's an embodied exploration, a play, that means that as they try to do things, it informs their mind, rather than the mind creating a plan and informing the body. So she's like an excellent person to go and Google up and read her work. There's some short papers. It's a really nice way to get you thinking about how does a child go from being, go on their learning journey. God, how long am I going to hold this for? I've been standing here for ages, right? So at the moment, we're very cognitively focused, okay? And the canvas is like that. But what I want to say... Can you hold that for a second? Good luck. Oh no, I've stuck it to the board now. Okay. If we think about this as the full human, and this as the mind and nervous system that sits inside that human. Thank you very much. Oh dear. I would say that the way intelligence really works, if you can see, obviously, this is the environment around the human. Stuff comes into the person through the ears, through the eyes, through the senses, goes into the brain, into the processor, and then kind of comes out the other side at some point when we express, when we write things down, when we talk, etc. So I see it more like that it comes like this. It's all right, isn't it? It could look a lot better than that. Wait, let's try again. I think I might have overkilled it this time. Let's try this way. It kind of comes from the outside, and intelligence kind of comes as a flow that goes all the way through and comes out the other side. And the best way to actually study it would be to try to observe the whole process and the whole links between the different steps. Not just the cognition, but the relationship between the senses and the cognition, the relationship between cognition and expression and the environment again. So, does that make sense? how I'm talking about trying to not just expand the canvas, but expand the observation and the canvas on how we think about intelligence, because I hope that in the future, healthcare professionals and education professionals like you guys will be able to work together, along with the parents and everybody else that cares about these kids, to think about fundamentally how to get them to flourish, well, to flow well, without frustration, to flourish in an unknown environment. And Aristotle coined this word eudaimonia, which means human flourishing. And that, hopefully, is the point. That's the point of why you're here, is to help kids to flourish in a world that we don't know what it's going to look like. So that's the first point, is about imagination. The second, well, I'll let the video talk first. Fresh and tasty. The front is done. So when I went to, my project's called the Corcovado Project because there's a rainforest in Costa Rica that I visited, which really, I guess, changed my life, which is the most biologically diverse place on the planet. And for me, it was like a mecca. 2.5% of the world's biodiversity under one roof. Have any of you been to Costa Rica? Did you like it?
Yeah.
I thought it was one of my favourite places in the world. And did you find the people there were... How did you find the people?
They were really welcoming,
Yeah, I found them to be the friendliest, welcoming people I've ever met, wanting nothing in return. And actually, economically, they have a very interesting situation because they only earn about $14,000 GDP per person, or per capita. But if you compare the amount they earn to how much progress there is in society, how much education, opportunity, freedom and equality there is, they are the most efficient economy in the world. And there's something going on. Their strapline that you see everywhere there is pura vida, pure life. There's something going on in Costa Rica. They've got the conditions right where they live very simply, but they get a lot of flourishing conditions for their people. And I think that there is like a bell curve where we can do too much. And actually we get fat and gluttonous and we get too busy and we have mental health issues. And on the other end, if you don't have enough, obviously it's hard to get on with life as well. And so what I've been trying to explore is how to make life simple again and how to make things cheaper again so we don't have to work as much in order to survive, so we can afford to spend more time doing things like being here today. If I had to be grinding all the time, every day, I wouldn't be able to come and be with you guys today and share such a special moment. But the important thing about this is the first hut that you saw in the first video I bought on eBay for $7,000. I then sold that hut recently for $9,000. Yes, because I managed to get it in Cabin Porn. Do you know the book Cabin Porn? No? Anybody? Please tell me I'm not alone. God, can't believe I lost on Cabin Porn. But anyway, some people like that book. It's got a book of all the best huts around the world, basically, and they managed to put me on my on their Instagram, which I was chuffed about. I think that's what managed to let me sell it for more. But anyway, sold the hut, and then I designed those metal brackets as like a framework to make it easy for us to build huts. And then got a bunch of people. There's 2 girls from Canada there, 2 guys came from Italy. Again, people who watch the videos on YouTube and came all the way here to Sussex just to come and help me. Poor people, I put them through slave labour for 5 days. They flew all the way from Canada, did 5 days of slave labour and then flew home. So I feel kind of bad, but they said they enjoyed it, so that's all right. But the point I'm trying to make here is that it is very hard to do things alone. And you can do online learning, you can do online courses. So the question is, why would you come here? Why would you be here in Sussex with these people in this room? And it's all about the experience that you get together. It's all about the adventures that you go on, the collaborative co-creation experience that you get, not just amongst your peers, but amongst these guys that are lining the left-hand side as well. These guys have been through it, they've got wealth of experience. And if you take 6 months to begin to talk to people openly about what you're struggling with and what you really are curious about, you've just wasted 6 months of this experience. So I would really, really, really encourage you, whether it's with the aid of alcohol or without, it doesn't really matter, but go and have some fun, with each other. The quicker you do it, you're going to do it in the end anyway. You're here for far too long not to get to know each other, not to have fun, and not to share some of your dreams and aspirations with each other. It's easy just to keep everything on a shallow level, but we need to get past that ASAP, really, in order to build the kind of bonds that help you with your studies, help you live a good life, and probably end up being friends for a very, very long time. Some of the guys that I've worked with at UCL that were in their first year, like you guys are right now, cool, I didn't realise the comparison was so clear. One girl called Virginia is now living back in her village in Spain, and I'm going on tour again this November through Scotland, to the place I mentioned, France, Spain, and then back to my woods at the end of November, and we're going to her village in Spain. So I'm taking like 70 creatives down there to spend a weekend together, to get inspired, think about life, and kind of explore some of the things I'm discussing with you, trying to bring people into that environment. It's just that you guys have it baked in right here, it's right at your fingertips, but I didn't go to university, and I didn't get that chance to explore. And like I said, as we go through life, as people become more and more adult, they begin to lose that ability to be open-minded and to explore life and really map their lives to the world that they see around them. So yeah, I'm having to take people away to go and do it now, but you've got it on tap here, so don't miss the opportunity. But Virginia was a first year student just like you. We did projects together, we worked together, we've become friends, and now I'm taking 70 people down to her village in the middle of Spain. All they do is make red wine and grow broccoli. That's basically, it's a village of 150 people, and it's absolutely beautiful. I could tell you more, but we would be wasting your time. I'll show you the next video. Oh, there's no sound on this one, sorry, it's not as sexy as the other two, but this is basically my very, very first attempt at trying to map the world of the woods into a VR experience so that people can see it in these goggles. And what I'm trying to do is take the theory that I'm describing to you here, this conceptual theory, and I'm trying to apply it now to the real world. I'm trying to walk the talk I'm telling you about, which is move myself out of my comfort zone of business and the charity third sector world of building, organising teams, and into a world that I don't understand, but I'm just taking one step at a time, which is to try to take my conceptual idea and move it into the practical world of actually helping people, the world that you guys are operating in. And there are so many, if you type theories of intelligence, you'll very quickly see that there's probably 10 mainstream theories, but none of them, other than the main one that we understand, kind of the IQ-based paradigm, have managed to operationalize their idea beyond just words and maybe a diagram. And thus, the only people that really know about them are psychology students. It doesn't really get to the place where it helps people in their daily lives, and more importantly, doesn't get to that systemic place where it changes the systems, basically the grading and measurement systems that we're all redundant to in our educational and working lives. And so for me, what I've done here is I've filmed the woods in 360. I've then got this little machine. Oh no, it's up there holding my phone up, but basically it measures your brain waves. It's an electroencephalogram. It's called an EEG machine. It measures your brain waves. So I put people in the VR experience, and then I measure their brain activity as they're watching the woods experience, and I'm beginning to explore basically simple questions like, if you actually sit them in the woods, does their brain have a similar activity to what happens when you put them in the virtual woods? Or, and then also, what if you put them in a normal, like, coffee shop environment? In the analog and in the digital, where are the correlations? What can we say about these? Basically, I'm beginning to build up I'm playing, I'm exploring in the area of getting biometric data from our bodies. I'm observing you, if you were in the test, engaging with an environment, a digital one or an analog one. Now, I don't know exactly how to take the next steps in that journey, but that's why for me it's a playful exploration, a very serious one, but the way I'm learning about it is by taking one step at a time. Even coming here today to be with you, it's a vulnerable experience to try to map my idea to a practical environment that you guys are in. I've become quite comfortable with the lofty academic language and trying to confuse people, talking about the difference between epistemic and ontological knowledge and going on about all sorts of theoretical concepts. It's completely irrelevant in the environment where we're actually trying to help people. So I'm trying to embody that for myself, and this is my very, very first attempt at doing that in the woods and see what kind of correlations there are. What I really want to share with you guys as a takeaway is that in order to get good learning for ourselves, and in order to get value and good learning for the students that you're going to be working with in the future, we have to hold two bodies of knowledge with high regard. The first is the theoretical knowledge, the knowledge of those that have gone before us, that's proven itself over the test of time to have value. And the other is the context, the knowledge of the child that's sitting in front of you, or the knowledge of your own mind if you're thinking about your own learning. And we have to hold both of those in tension. And for me, I found a way to develop a process where I learn stuff and then I put it into practice. And then importantly, the third step is the one that really compounds the learning as you go, which is the reflection process. There's no point just learning and doing and then learning and doing, because all you're doing is going back to the starting line over and over again and hoping that somehow in the background some compounding learning is going to happen. But if you can learn some stuff, find some correct arena to practice it, to actually try it, even if that's sitting in a room with your mate practicing a lesson, or whether that is finding an environment to do an after-school club or whatever it is for you guys, and then taking the time to sit with your mate and have a beer and discuss and reflect what went well, what went wrong. Treat it as a proper experiment and see what was good and bad and ugly about it. Then if you take that back to the learning experience again, that's when you begin to get some real compounding gains. And I found that by doing that, doing it slowly, one thing at a time, not rushing it, I can take myself down a rabbit hole. I can take myself into spaces that, frankly, I didn't think I would be able to, and probably those around me didn't think I would do that, at least. I'm not saying they thought I couldn't, but no one ever would have thought I would be probably doing some of the work I'm doing now. So I really, really encourage you not just to think about that for yourselves, but also for your students and your environment that you're going to be working in. And the final thing I really want to say, and then I'd love to sort of open it up to a chat really and a discussion. Nothing worse than a full lecture for an hour. We want to have that chance to see whether any of what I've been talking about has actually gone in, or whether you're all just getting ready for the beers tonight. It could be a bit of both. So just to recap, the first thing is that if nothing else, if you can just support the imagination of the children that you find yourself in front of, and at this point even the peers that you're around, you hear a wacky idea, say, okay, tell me a bit more about it. Don't just laugh at it or probably most likely just miss it altogether. If you can support it through asking more questions about it, that is what I call the gift of creative belief. When someone births something into your world and you say, oh, that's nice, tell me a little more about that. It's honestly one of the best things that you can do to help people move forwards, and I will never forget and never be able to thank enough those that have taken that when I've had early stage vulnerable ideas and they've been willing to pull more out from me. And that is a massive gift, and that is what we need in the society that we're moving into, from the kids in 25 years who will be leading our countries. The next is about exploration. So just make sure you get together, you have some fun, you have some beers, but then get down to actually talking about what matters. What do we really care about? What are the dreams that you have for the future? Don't miss that opportunity, you'll only regret it. And then you've got to find your own process, a process that works for you, of learning, creating and reflecting, and think about how to do that in a diverse multitude of different ways for the kids in your class. The thing that I found, the wisdom I found from ecology, from being in the woods and observing nature, is that One, everything changes all the time. Like nature promises nothing other than constant change. So any fallacy that we have that things are going to stay the same or be consistent is founded on absolutely nothing in the natural world. But we have constant change, and that in ecology we find strength in diversity. If you look at ecological systems that are linear and growing hundreds of thousands of the same thing in a row, they get viruses, they fall down basically. They are not strong and resilient to conditions. When you have a diverse and flourishing ecology, we can tolerate a lot. And I've got to the place these days in my life where looking at nature, which is the only system that has that has proven itself over the test of time, is the only thing I really allow to teach me. And it's very, very clear that in diversity we find strength in nature. Think about that in your friends who you choose to be friends with. You know, you've seen those things on Facebook where it says like you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So pick your friends wisely and commit to them. But also in the kids that you're going to be interested in and care for and love, hopefully. Their minds work incredibly differently, and they can be experiencing frustration for so many different reasons. Kids don't all learn to walk in the same way. If it all gets a bit much, if you start losing it a bit, going a bit mad, having a bit of a breakdown, we all do it. In fact, not 2 weeks ago, I had to start turning around from meetings and driving home. It was the first time I've ever properly experienced anxiety, and I didn't experience it in the way that I thought I would. I thought anxiety was like, oh no, what's happening? Like in the mind, right? Like the mind's always like, oh no, what's happening? I don't know, I don't understand, I'm drowning. It was that kind of like busy noise in the mind. But I didn't have it like that. I had chest pain through here, coming into my arm. I had a bit of like throbbing in my neck. And my mind was like, that's weird. That's probably not right, is it? And then I'm like, go woozy, like, shit me, that is not right. And then when I did that when I was driving a car, I was like, okay, this is not safe. And really my mind just stayed fairly calm, but my body essentially couldn't handle. I think that, to be honest, I think it's the challenge for me of going into the woods was actually fine. It's been coming out and trying to remap my life, what I found in the woods, to the modern world, the institutional life that we live, that I'm finding challenging. So, point is, as soon as I felt that, as soon as it got dangerous, I took 2 weeks off, very slow, did 4 or 5 hours on my laptop, didn't go anywhere, and rebuilt myself with more structure, more routine, got back on the road basically and started going again. And every single day I was out on the golf course, I love golf, or walking in the woods for a few hours. So basically, this is the first university campus I've ever been to that looks like it's been built inside a forest. So if you ever get stuck in this year or in the following years, just head straight for the hills. Not metaphorically, literally. Go straight up and get into the trees. Don't take your phone with you, please. Just go and sit and be and walk around. Give yourself an hour or two to decompress, and I can promise you that nature will do its business on you and get you back in the game. I think that's it, yeah. Thank you.